Two people started businesses the same year. One raised $50,000 from friends and family. One bought a pressure washer for $4,000. 3 years later, the startup was gone. 20 years later, the pressure washing business was still running. That gap is what this video is about. Not failure versus success. Fragile versus durable. I've spent 7 years studying businesses that last versus businesses that don't. And the pattern that determines longevity almost never gets talked about. It isn't the idea. It isn't the team. It isn't the market timing. It's the relationship between how much the business costs and how much it earns. If you only remember one thing, make it the last one. My name is Business But Simple. Let's go. Let's start with what kills most businesses. Not competition, not bad marketing. Overhead. The fixed costs that keep coming whether you earn or not. A startup with $500,000 in funding has overhead from day one. Office lease, salaries, equipment, software subscriptions, marketing budget. Before they earn a single dollar, they're already spending thousands every month. That structure creates a runway, and runways always end. Most startups have 12 to 18 months before the money runs out. In that window, they must achieve profitability or raise more money. Most don't achieve either. The runway ends. The business closes. Now compare that to the pressure washing business that started with $4,000. No office lease, no employees on day one, no software subscriptions, one machine, one truck, a route of clients. That's the entire structure. Its overhead is fuel, equipment maintenance, and basic insurance. A bad month still covers those costs with one job. There is no runway. There is no funding clock. There is no cliff. When a slow month comes, the boring business slows down but doesn't die. When a slow month comes, the startup might not make payroll. That structural difference determines which business exists in 20 years. Now let me show you the businesses that consistently demonstrate this pattern. Coin-operated laundry. Startup cost, $10,000 to $50,000. The overhead is the lease, utilities, and machine maintenance. That's it. Demand comes from human nature. People need clean clothes forever. The laundromat industry has operated for over 60 years in the United States. Not because it's innovative, because it's necessary. Pressure washing. Startup cost, $3,000 to $6,000. This business can be profitable within its first month of operation. A startup burning through funding may take 2 years to reach profitability, or never reach it at all. Residential cleaning. Startup cost, $2,000 to $5,000. 5 recurring weekly clients generates between $5,000 and $8,000 monthly. With 4 employees, the number reaches $40,000 monthly. The business doesn't require a brilliant product. It requires showing up consistently. Pest control. Startup cost, $10,000 to $20,000 including vehicle and equipment. Monthly contracts renew automatically because clients can't risk pest problems. The global pest control market grew during every recession in its modern history. Self-storage. Startup cost for small facility, $30,000 to $50,000. Tenants pay automatically and forget what they stored. Demand grows during recessions when people downsize and businesses shrink. Pool cleaning. Startup cost, $2,000 to $5,000. A technician with 40 clients earns $80,000 to $120,000 annually working half days. Compare that to a startup founder working 80-hour weeks for 3 years, who then watches the business close because the runway ended. Vending machines. Startup cost, $5,000 to $15,000 for a small route. Location agreements signed once earn indefinitely. ATM networks. Startup cost, $2,000 to $5,000 per machine. Each machine earns transaction fees around the clock without any staff. Now let me ask you a question nobody in startup culture asks. Why do we celebrate the $500,000 business that failed and ignore the $5,000 business that ran for 20 years? The startup story is exciting. The boring business story is rare. Rare because it didn't fail, not rare because it's special. Here's what the financial data actually shows about small business survival. Approximately 20% of businesses fail in their first year. Approximately 45% fail by year 5. Approximately 65% fail by year 10. but laundromats have a 95% survival rate at year 5. Why? Because their overhead is low and their demand never expires. Those two factors, low overhead and permanent demand, are the blueprint. Every boring business on this list has both. Almost no high-capital startup has either. Now let me tell you about two people I know. James was 32 when he sold his car to invest in a software startup. He raised an additional $40,000 from friends and family. He built an app for 2 years. Good feedback, slow growth. Then the funding ran out. The growth wasn't fast enough. He closed the app. He couldn't repay his friends and family for 2 years. Today he's 38. He's still rebuilding his credit and his relationships. Marcus was 32 when he bought a used pressure washer for $3,500. First month, $800. His hands shook knocking on doors. By month 6, a homeowners association contract gave him 20 houses. Today at 38, he has 2 employees and bills over $180,000 a year. James borrowed from everyone he loved and lost it all. Marcus risked $3,500 of his own money and built real wealth. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't opportunity. It wasn't luck. It was the relationship between starting capital and overhead. Marcus's business could survive any slow month from day 1. James's business needed growth fast, or it died. That's not a strategy difference. That's a structural difference. And structural differences determine outcomes far more than strategic ones. Here's something the startup world doesn't want to acknowledge. Most venture-backed startups are designed to exit, not to last. They're not trying to build a durable business. They're trying to build a sellable one quickly. That's fine for venture capitalists. It's not fine for someone risking their savings. A venture capitalist has a portfolio of 20 bets. You have one. If your one bet fails, there's no portfolio to absorb it. The boring business is a different kind of bet entirely. It doesn't promise explosive growth. It promises consistent survival. And consistent survival over 20 years generates more real wealth than explosive growth that crashes. Morgan Housel makes this point better than anyone in Same as ever. Getting rich requires taking risk. Staying rich requires humility and fear. The startup that chases explosive growth is optimizing for getting rich. The boring business is optimized for staying solvent, and staying solvent wins over time. Here's what this means practically for you right now. Before you evaluate any business, ask 2 questions. First, what is the minimum this business needs to earn to survive? Second, how certain is that minimum to be earned in the worst month? If the answer to both is clear and favorable, the business can survive anything. If either answer is uncertain, the business is fragile. The startup fails this test almost every time. The boring business passes it almost every time. Now let's talk about the objection everyone is thinking. But boring businesses have a ceiling. They can't become billion-dollar companies. That's true. Here's the question you're not asking. How many people actually build billion-dollar companies? And how many of those were ordinary people with ordinary savings? The boring business can't make you a billionaire. It can make you financially free. And financially free is the goal most people actually have when they say they want to be rich. They don't want $1 billion. They want to stop worrying about money. They want to stop trading time for money. They want income that comes whether they work that week or not. A boring business with recurring contracts does exactly that. A billion-dollar startup dream does not. Here's the final thing I want you to take from this video. Capital preserves itself by not being spent on overhead. A business with low overhead can survive anything. A business with high overhead needs everything to go right. And in business, everything rarely goes right. The startup that needs everything to go right is always one bad month from collapse. The boring business that needs almost nothing to survive has no such vulnerability. That's the real meaning of the $5,000 business outlasting the $500,000 startup. It's not about the capital. It's about the relationship between capital and overhead. $5,000 with minimal overhead outlasts $500,000 with maximum, every single time. If you're considering a business right now, run the overhead test first. Before the business plan, before the branding, before the name. If the overhead test passes, everything else becomes much less risky. Because a business that can survive slow months can survive to figure everything else out. The startup that can't survive a slow month gets no time to figure anything out. Time is the most valuable resource in any business. Low overhead buys you time. High overhead steals it. And the business that runs out of time before it runs out of problems always closes. The boring business gives you decades to solve problems slowly. That's why the pressure washing business that started in someone's driveway still exists 20 years later. And why the exciting startup that raised $500,000 is a LinkedIn story, not a running business. The boring business doesn't make headlines. It makes income. And income, compounded over 20 years, is the quietest form of wealth that exists. If this changed how you evaluate any business idea, hit the like button. I'm Business But Simple, and I'll see you in the next one.
True wealth is often invisible. It is built through systems. Like these everyday businesses, they create automated recurring income. This is how you build a lasting legacy. Start your journey today.